So that is my eczema strategy if my timeline looked like that. So the first tool that we always use is the timeline. And this is really important for mapping how the conditions changed over time. This is going to help us understand, could it be the microbiome? Is it dietary intake? Is it a stress-driven condition? The first place we start on the timeline is, of course, the birth. Now, the birth is really important because it tells us what state the microbiome's in, any of the complications that have happened, use of antibiotics with mum during pregnancy, things like that. So in this case, if my situation looked like this, normal delivery, okay, so not a C-section, normal delivery, and breastfed. Okay, so not the classic C-section, formula feeding, we know all that. Let's treat this situation where it's just a normal delivery, okay? But the child still, by age 1, we have small patches of eczema on the arms, just small patches just inside those flexor surfaces, all right? Classic presentation, inside there, and a small amount of asthma. Okay, so when they go to their friend's house, their friend's got a cat, they start to get a little bit wheezy, all right? So this, the asthma and the eczema, what's called the atopic triad, which is 3 conditions that all have an allergic type root, and that is eczema, asthma, and food allergies. They all normally come together. If the root causes of the condition are not remediated, what happens is you'll go through that. It's called the atopic march, which is where you move through those conditions. So what's going on here? How we ended up, how does baby or child end up with these small patches inside the arms, maybe on the backs of the knees as well, and a little bit of wheezy asthma? What's going on here? The relationship that the immune system has with the microbiome, remember, I won't draw the full thing out, but they're the gut cells, all right, and that's the gut, and then the food's moving along here. The microbiome, the trillion different microbes that have lots of different jobs for us, one of those jobs, one of those really important roles is that they act as a library for our immune system. There is a two-way communication network with the microbes in your gut. And one of those really important jobs is to regulate our immune response to things. So with everyone with an allergic type condition, we notice they have a particular microbiome profile. What do they all share in that profile? They are deficient in commensal microbes. What's commensal microbe? They're the ones that come with the starter kit. They should be coming from mum. So in the absence of some of these microbes here, we start to develop allergic responses to things. So with this drop in the commensal microbes, we're not getting this information from the gut, this two-way communication that helps our immune system respond accurately to threats in our environments and threats internally. All right, so if we drop in commensal, normally immune sensitivity goes up. So what's happened here? What happened here? Because normal delivery, so we should have all the microbes, and breastfeeding, so we should have all the microbes. What's the variable? The variable is mum. The variable is mum's microbiome. And this goes for anyone who's currently breastfeeding their child. If mum's microbiome is missing those microbes that help to regulate a normal immune response, she can't give them to baby. All right, so yes, there's this great handover of microbes, but if she doesn't have the right microbes that help to regulate the immune system, then that's how it gets passed on. Yes, there's a genetic component to the condition. I think something like 15% of Northern Europeans have a loss of function mutation in the filaggrin gene. That means that if that gene is active, then you can have a drop in filaggrin anyway. Now, epigenetics governs whether that gene is expressed during replication or in use. So just because you have a gene that codes for something doesn't mean it's going to be expressed. So DNA is not destiny. You can still control it by diet changes, lifestyle changes, things like that. Back to the big picture. So the hypothesis at the moment is that mum's microbiome was deficient in some of these microbes and so didn't pass them on to baby. If we couple that with the standard Western diet, so we've got a high number of more refined foods. When we say refined foods, that's not just it's made in a factory. It's more that a lot of the natural nutrients has been stripped out. The body's less able to recognize. I'm talking about things like grain-based foods, so lots of pasta, anything made with wheat, but also we're not having a nutritionally dense intake of food. So as we transition on age 1, diet's moving in that direction. We're starting to flesh out these foods. What are the first things that get recommended to give baby? It's like, oh, we'll have a biscuit and some milk and some all these. It's like, no, give them normal whole foods and just watch what happens to the microbiome. Because guess what? The good guys, they don't eat that. They eat non-soluble fiber. And this was in the other video. They eat non-soluble fiber. And this is the importance of doing the timeline. And it's the first thing that everyone in the group will be asked to do. And there's resources in there to do it. We need to plot these key points. So this is the start of the condition. Then how does it develop? Well, actually, it kind of goes down. It disappears until about age 20, if I'm in this situation, been to university, having a bit of drinks, diet gets even worse, lots of refined quick foods. So when we go refined, we also go low nutrient. So it's increase in inflammation, decrease in amount of free available nutrients and non-soluble fiber. Right, so in 20s, have a bit of a flare up on the arms, the skin gets dry, right? But notice we haven't used steroids yet. No introduction of steroids yet. We've just been using emollients or creams, Vaseline, those things that we are normally pushed toward. So the skin's dry, a little bit flare up here, but then it goes down again and it disappears until it gets married. Okay, you would be stunned at the amount of people that flare up when they get married. It's a high stress event. If you look at the ranking of human experiences that have high stress, marriage is one of them, interestingly enough. And, kids, job, and stress. So then, big flare up, and now we're on to the steroids as well. So what do I think when I get the steroids? I'm like, oh, I'll put it on. It's gone. It's disappeared. You've suppressed the symptoms. You've turned off the alarm bell. You haven't got rid of the condition. So starts to have steroids at this point in time, marriage and things like that. And then here we are up to present day where we're currently using the steroids and we've got quite a high stress situation. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we had a round of antibiotics because I kept getting a cold or I kept getting ill. Just a few repeated issues here that I couldn't quite shake. All right, notice that's already an alarm bell that the immune system is not able to mount a defense or have a full flush through. So right at the end here, right at the end of the timeline, we've got the antibiotic use. Okay, so now we've set the stage. This is the first thing that's most important because now we can be strategic. Now we can see, started off with the microbiome, but certainly more recent triggers, I can see that it's going to be stress. But then to finish things off, we've had this round of antibiotics or multiple rounds of antibiotics. Now, what are the key factors that we're looking at here? We have microbiome there, we have stress, we have antibiotics, which means microbiome, right? So immediately I know when we go into the rest of the assessment, what we're looking for and therefore what changes we can make. So let's go through it now. Once you've put together your timeline for this person, then we're going to go through the key factors, which is sleep, diet, bowel movements and state of the bowel, stress, toxins, and then supplements and any of the medications. So let's run through this one now. So sleep, let's say at this point in time, I'm trying to get to bed for about 10, but then I'm having a little scroll on my phone, lots of blue light coming in, so that melatonin production is not going to be optimal. We're not going to drop off to sleep that well. But I'm trying to get to bed for about 10, but I'm having a little scroll. It's not a restful period. I'm not allowing my body to move into the state where it's ready for sleep. So bed at 10 p.m., but then within about 2 hours, I'm waking up, I'm starting to scratch, I'm hot, having problems regulating my body temperature. So my sleep quality is low and I'm waking up during the night. So sleep is not scoring well at the moment. Diet, at the moment, I've got kids, it's difficult. I'm not going to cook for everyone. So I'm just going to cook whatever's quick. When I come in from work, I'm going to throw some stuff in the oven, cheeky takeaway, something like that. So my nutrient intake is low as well. Plus a lot of the foods that I am eating are inflammatory to the gut and they grow the wrong type of microbes. These free available nutrients and sugars, they will grow the wrong type of microbes. We need non-soluble fiber. And right now, it's not in the diet. Bowel movements, at this stage in time, I'm having one movement per day. Maybe I'll miss a day sometimes, but I notice when I do go, it is quite offensive to the nose. It's a bit, it's not a normal bowel movement smell. Also, I have a bit of bloating, especially after quite a carby meal. I'll notice that I have a carb baby and a bit windy as well, like slightly higher on the amount of wind that I'm producing. Stress, I'm stressed. You can see this here. I've got all this stuff going on. I've got kids, job. I'm trying to turn up to work early. I need a promotion. I'm really trying to put the work in there. So stress is a factor. And then toxins, I noticed that I have a sensitivity to strong smells. So cigarette smoke, aftershaves, perfumes. I notice that I'm not able to tolerate those very well. Not that my skin flares, but that I'm just like, oh. So that's normally an indication of something called sluggish liver, which is where your toxic burden is too high for the liver to be able to process these toxins in a sustainable way. So it's a good indicator that yes, it's not just a skin problem. There are other things that are off inside the body. And then medical conditions and supplementations, other existing factors. We've got steroids. I'm taking a vitamin D supplement because it's coming to winter time anyway, and that's it. So what do we do? Now we're here. We've got this situation. We've got a good snapshot of what's happening inside. Question is, what do we do about it? So let's go through it together. So sleep, we need to make sure that there's no blue light, okay? Which means instead of scrolling right before you go to bed, just do that like an hour before and set yourself like 10 minutes. But then read or meditate or think or journal or plan the next day, go analog, right? So get a notebook and go through that process. That's going to allow your body to drop into this state where it's ready to go to sleep. For the diet, move on to a elimination diet or a rotation diet, which is where we're taking out the most common triggers, because getting a test done, getting these food tests done, it's normally a waste of time. And the reason for that is because your body can react in many ways to foods, not just an IgE sensitivity. You can have an IgG, you can have an intolerance, you can have a sensitivity. So there are lots of different ways that the body can actually respond to foods, but only one of them is going to show up on an IgG test or an IgE test. All right, so just because you seem fine to some of these foods, if you get a blood test, doesn't mean that you actually are. So rotation diet, cutting out the main things, which is gluten, dairy, eggs, peanuts, soy. This is the big five responsible for 75% of flares. All right, and that's the data telling you that, and the information that we've got in the clinic. 75% of people will have an issue with these. Now, cutting foods out is a whole thing all by itself, and that's why we have a group to walk people through this process, because it's tricky. It requires behavior change and shopping changes and mental changes. It can be difficult to rotate these foods out of the diet. That's why getting support going through the process is important. For this person, for me in this situation, I would do the gut reset. And the gut reset has three parts, which is remove, replace, and refeed. Oh yeah. So removal, how do we remove microbes that shouldn't be there from the gut? We know for sure that in somebody who has an absence of commensal microbes, the gut doesn't really do blank space. It doesn't leave gaps. So if there's space in the gut and there's food available, microbes will proliferate into that. But we want to make sure they're the right ones. And so removing is a normal process that a lot of indigenous cultures will go through once or twice a year, 3 times a year, sometimes in tropical climates. They'll have a group of herbs that will naturally remove any parasites, pathogens, anyone that shouldn't be in the normal gut. All right, and they'll go through that process once or twice a year to make sure. In the West, we don't do that. We don't do anything for our gut microbiome apart from like have a Yakult or like take a general probiotic. There's way more to a gut reset. So removing with specific herbs, and that will vary depending on whether you're on existing medications. Replace, so not just Bifidobacterium lactobacillus, we're also looking at Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a healthy yeast, interestingly enough. It's about diversity. It's not just 2 types of microbe that we're getting from off the shelf in Holland and Barrett. We need a broad range. That's why multiple rounds of different probiotics, plus fermented foods, things like that. And then refeed. What do the good guys eat? Non-soluble fiber. That's right, correct. That's why the dietary changes are so important, is because now we need to be, once they're in, once we've installed them with the probiotics, now they need something to eat. That's why the diet's important. Stress, simply enough, and this is a fairly recent process after I've been doing a lot of research and reading, the most powerful thing you can do as a human is practice something called non-judgment, which is where you are removing the label gun in your mind. So everything that's happening to you, even maybe when you're watching this video now, you might be thinking, what a loser, get a life. Just remove the label. Everything in the world that you're observing right now, it just is. Okay? When you label it and say, oh, this is bad, this is good, this is good, this is bad. What's happening is when you put an emotional label on things, your body's going to start to experience that emotion. And so just practicing non-judgment and reserving the right to make a judgment. All right, so if someone is upsetting you at work, you think, why is this person upsetting me? What belief system do I have that's causing this emotional trigger? And then just decide to practice non-judgment. And just notice how often this comes up. So a guy drives down the road with a loud exhaust and you're like, oh, that guy. It's like, whoa. Notice how you've allowed that situation to be internalized and turned into a physiological event in your body. Whereas it was out there a minute ago and you've pulled it in here because of your belief system about it. All right, so practicing non-judgment is a really powerful way to reduce the stress. Toxins, at some point in time, we're going to go through a detox process, but only after we've done a gut reset and the bowel movements have normalized. All right, if you start to do a reset now, we're going to be pulling toxins into the stool, into the gut. But if we've got a backlog and we're not going to the toilet as often as we should, that means these toxins are going to stay in the gut for a longer period of time with the potential for reabsorption. So round and round we go. That's why we don't always jump into a detox first thing. We'll go through the gut process first. Then supplementation, yeah, vitamin D is good to start. Then a few important ones, especially for the gut lining, if we're doing a bit of a gut reset. A few ones I'll give you here. L-glutamine, inulin. You know, if you've got youngsters and they're not quite onto the elimination diet yet, or you're struggling to get the fiber in, you can use inulin for that as a prebiotic. You can also take a postbiotic as well. You can also use something called butyrate. It's one of those short chain fatty acids that feeds these enterocytes. And so that is my eczema strategy if my timeline looked like that.